Right now.
Good.
Hello and welcome to another Hello and welcome to another live stream from the only channel you need to not only survive the current apocalypse but actually enjoy it. And today we're going to get started by reading chapter 4 in my new book. Now I haven't had internet for a few days, and so I wasn't able actually to get anything done this week. I'd actually tried to write a little bit using those books on the shelf back there, but what would normally take me about 10 seconds with the internet was taking about 15 minutes with books. So I didn't get any writing done, but I did go back and kind of proofread and rearrange things. So if you go to the website and click on the tab at the top that says the book, you'll notice that I did go through and rearrange a lot of things. So you've got the outline got a little bit more clear and a little longer, and then chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 are up there, but they've been rearranged, and it's actually gotten a little bit into number 6, and I added a few paragraphs to the rest, so we got that done. If you go take advantage of it, it's there. It's on the website. So we'll start by reading chapter 4, which opens up with the Bible verse, Isaiah chapter 5 and verse 20. Woe to those who exchange evil for good and good for evil, those who say that bitter is sweet and sweet is bitter. They have exchanged their enlightenment for a mixture of darkness and light. Because nearly everything inflicted upon mankind by those at the top of civilization's hierarchy is obviously wrong, governments must first convince their citizens that even the concept of right and wrong has loopholes. In most cases, simply holding up a copy of whatever ancient text a society accepts as the Word of God is all that it takes to convince simple men to engage in nearly any kind of atrocity. No war, mass execution, or genocide has ever been conducted by any nation or people who did not believe that their activities had the backing of some deity. In modern times, the vast majority of such atrocities have been conducted by so-called Christians, thinking that they had the backing of the God of the Bible. For this system to work, the religions of the empire must be able to convince people that what they are being taught is the truth, and not just the truth, but the only truth. I have been involved with quite a few religions and cannot think of a single one that did not frown on its members seeking God through any means other than those that had been certified through some officially recognized governing body. To teach things other than what are approved by church hierarchy is called heresy or apostasy. In most cases, the simple act of quoting Bible verses that don't agree with church policy can get a person into trouble. Should a person choose to examine the teachings of other religions, they would often find that there really isn't all that much difference between what they have been told to believe and what members of other religions have been told to believe. If religions were novels, the similarities would be considered evidence of plagiarism. Books written by anthropologists, sociologists, and psychiatrists have attempted to explain away the similarities between the huge variety of human belief systems, with many high-sounding words and phrases which, although quite popular within academia, very obviously serve no purpose other than to conceal the truth. If we look to the ancient past, the similarities are even more profound. It is as if all humans earth-wide left records of the same exact events, just from different points of view. Even though every religion on earth is similar to every other religion, there are distinct differences that exist in the hierarchy, costumes, rules, rituals, and diets that define the varying sects of mankind. With all of the confusion that exists, it is understandable that many would simply throw up their hands and not even attempt to figure out if any of the religions are superior to the others. But if we compare every religion on earth to the religion of the Bible, we will find that what the Bible teaches is nothing like that of any of the religions of the empire. The Bible book of James says quite clearly, the only religion that our Father does not consider to be defiled and stained is looking after the welfare of orphans and widows in their tribulation and not allowing ourselves to become dirtied by human society. Obviously, the cults claiming to be based on the Bible are aware of this verse, and yet every one of them incorporates the wicked hierarchies, costumes, rules, rituals, and diets that are spoken of in this very verse as defilement and stains. Obviously, any decent, loving human being reading James chapter 1 and verse 27 would be emotionally affected by the reasonableness and simplicity of what God is trying to communicate to His children. Unfortunately, the world is filled with people that are not decent, loving human beings. To them, the rules recorded in God's Word, the Bible, are simply not enough. They need something that sounds more like the arbitrary, nonsensical foolishness upon which civilization is based. They need hierarchies, costumes, rules, rituals, and diets. In general, those dedicated to the God of civilization do not have the capacity to put their faith in anything that isn't based on ritualistic legalism. In the ancient past, God recognized the same trend in the people that He chose to rescue from the oppression of the Egyptian Empire. He offered them an opportunity to live by His law, which we today call the Ten Commandments. But the people refused, so He gave those people His approval to live by what has come to be known as the Law of Moses. Over the thousands of years since God put Adam and Eve on this planet, He has allowed humans to create an overwhelming array of nonsensical, arbitrary legal codes. The result has been a perpetual system of planetary destruction leading to the world as it currently exists. And yet to this day, humans, when given opportunity to live by God's law, almost always reject it, based on a desire to create and live by laws that they perceive as their own. In English, this tendency to disregard God's law is called self-determination, also known as autonomy, self-rule, and sovereignty. This is just one example of the way in which God's Word differs from the teachings of the religions, but there are others. Even though the ancient writings of every religion on earth are very similar in their subject matter, how that information is presented is very different indeed. Every ancient book of religion that exists, whether it be of a current religion or of some long-dead religion, tells the same basic story. The only real difference between the Bible and all other ancient texts is how those stories are presented. All religions earthwide present the God of civilization as a beneficent, caring being that we can confidently put our faith in. He is spoken of by many names due to the variety of cultures of mankind and the variety of languages that we speak. In some cultures, including many that exist in our day, He is simply called God or Allah. In other ancient cultures, He was specifically addressed as Osiris, Zeus, Jupiter, or any of a variety of well-known and not so well-known names. We know that all of these gods are the same God because they all share similar attributes, and the stories of their exploits are usually quite similar as well. It is also easy to identify the God of civilization in the Bible. Once again, his name may be different, but the stories recorded about him are nearly identical to the stories recorded in all other ancient texts. There can be no doubt that the God of civilization is not the God of creation. In the Bible, the name most often used for the God of civilization is Satan. And that will conclude chapter 4. Hopefully I can continue to write without any internet interruptions and get another chapter up and ready to go by next week's live stream. Well, we got everybody
this week,
in.
First of all, we have hellos from Grandma Patty says hello. Douglas Alecliff says hello from Las Vegas. Nice and cool today in Las Vegas. By Morgan City. It's only 91, he says.
Where's
Dave,
that?
Las Vegas, but I guess he came from Morgan City, Louisiana.
Ah, yes, I know where that is. They said Morgan City. I was like, that ain't in Las Vegas.
Oh, yeah. Next comes Dale Rockwell. He says, hey, Sus, it's a nice sunny day in Susquehanna. Super U68 says, hello, everyone. Mac Wilcox says, on time today. Mishu says, present. Guess they're in the military. Marie's Vegetable Garden says, I'm here. Hello, Sustenance and Covering, and everyone. Marshmallow says, hey, y'all. A Simple Sister Living says, hi, y'all. Let's see. First question comes from Marie's Vegetable Garden. She's asking about the Bible says that not everyone that calls him Lord is getting into heaven. So what is your theory on what it is talking about?
Does it say heaven? Because a lot of times it'll say the kingdom of heaven. And it gets really complicated when you read the Bible. It sounds... Well, let me just say this. It says that when the end comes, at Armageddon, that people are going to die. A whole bunch of people are going to die. And that's God's war. That's the great day of God the Almighty. That's the day when the angels come back. That's Jesus and his angels come back, and they're fighting against Satan and his angels. But also, upon the earth, human beings are slaughtering one another. So you'll have rich people and poor people killing each other, and black people and white people killing each other, and Democrats killing Republicans, and just all that foolishness, people that are loyal to one football team killing people who are loyal to another football team. It's not really much different than what we're experiencing right now. But that's a death. Now, in the Bible, it talks about how there's a first death and a second death. Well, we know what first death is. If we've lived any time on this earth, we've watched loved ones experience the first death. The thing that's not really talked about in the Bible much is the second death. But then it talks about the resurrection that takes place immediately after Armageddon, and it speaks of those who live through that as never having to experience that, the second death at all, those who have maintained their integrity. And it talks about a second resurrection. Now, the word resurrection it's used in the Bible for a couple of times, and it's always about dead people coming back to life in fleshly bodies. It says that Lazarus was resurrected. I think Elijah resurrected somebody. There's a few other resurrections where the word isn't even used, but resurrection in the Greek, I can't think of what the word is right now, but I know the definition is like to stand up, or to stand up again. And so when it talks about how those calling me Lord, Lord will not get into heaven, it probably says the kingdom of heaven. Or somehow it's going to be worded a little bit different, because the kingdom of heaven might just be the people who experience that first resurrection when God's kingdom returns. It's not that they're going to go to hell, or that they're going to die and never be resurrected at all, because apparently at Armageddon, or immediately after Armageddon, every single human who has ever lived will be resurrected. And it even speaks about Satan and his demons being released. And so resurrected. You know, in the Bible, there's two different words for where people go when they die. Fleshly beings go to Sheol or Hades. Like in the Hebrew word is Sheol, which simply means the realm of the dead, and in Greek the word Hades means the realm of the dead. Now, of course, in popular English culture, Hades is hell, it's where you go to burn forever. But these people that the Bible was written for, or it was the language it was written in, was about Hades, which was the realm of the dead back then. It's taken on this whole new meaning in current times, but it didn't mean that back then. So the angels, it says in the Bible, who forsook their proper dwelling place to come to earth and impregnate the daughters of men, were imprisoned in pits of dense darkness, which in other verses of the Bible are called Tartarus. Well, that word Tartarus is also a Greek word, and it was in common usage. And if you go to an ancient Greek dictionary and look up Tartarus, Tartarus is the prison of the gods. And in the Bible, the angels are called gods. So this prison of the gods is a place where the wicked gods or wicked angels went. But anyways, I'm thinking, just so to make sure we're clear, if we were to go through the Bible and examine every single verse that talks about people going to hell, and every verse that talks about people who don't do what they're supposed to do dying, it's always going to, or if people go into heaven, it's usually those who enter into the kingdom of heaven. You see, when Jesus prayed, you know, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. He said, pray for that kingdom to come. You know, Jesus was asked, how do we pray? He said, pray for God's kingdom to come on earth as it is in heaven. Well, that's the kingdom of heaven. And so all verses like that, none of them are about sending anybody to a fiery hell. None of them are about people dying for all eternity at Armageddon. But there is held out that at the end of the 1,000-year reign of Jesus, there would be a second death. And I suspect that all of those who are wicked that are resurrected will get 1,000 years before they have to go through the same thing again. And if they're still clinging to civilization or self-rule at the end of that 1,000 years, then they'll experience the second death. You know, the word death only means one thing in the Bible. Death is death. So first death would be what we're experiencing now. Second death would probably be very similar, but maybe more permanent, and maybe not.
Flatball says this all sounds like Romans chapter 1. Is that where you're getting it from?
There's a Romans chapter 1, and it's like, is that the one where it's like, it talks about all the people that are going to be destroyed forever. It says men who lie with men, and people who are fornicators and thieves and drunkards and all that stuff. I think. But I think a lot of those verses are about humans interacting with angels inappropriately. You know, it's like drunkards. It talks about the drunkards in the book of Revelation as being drunk with human blood. You know, I've never drank human blood, but I've drank alcohol. Alcohol will make you drunk. But humans, I don't think angels get drunk off of, you know, they don't get intoxicated with alcohol. They have to drink human blood, or they have to spill it. That's why there's been 6,000 years of ritual human sacrifice, aka war, you know, combat, is to appease those demons that enjoy human beings being sacrificed.
Yeah, Flatball says that chapter apparently talks about people becoming reprobate. Next comes in from Kitchcool81. They say, thanks, you've just answered my question I've been meaning to talk to you about. So
we need to talk again soon. It's like, what is it, 6? It's 13 o'clock over there, 1 o'clock at night where he's living. Thank you for staying
really?
up.
You're up or what?
Kitchcool's 1 in the morning. He's listening to the live stream. That's cool.
Yeah, dedication. So he goes on, though, about what you've just talked about, saying, so one more thing about when it says that in Revelation 25, the rest of the dead did not come back until the 1,000 years had ended. he says that although that's in brackets, so he's guessing that's been added by the Jehovah's Witnesses.
No, I don't think it's. No, I don't think it's added. Sometimes parentheses are put around things that are implied because languages are different. So our language is not the same as the ancient Greek language, and so it's probably implied in some way. But I'm glad that you noticed that because I've never noticed it before. Probably I'll go back and look that up just to see why that's like that. Because sometimes, in languages things are implied. Like if I say hello, that's not all I'm saying. I'm saying hello to you, but we don't say the to you part because that's implied. Well, other languages have things that are implied that would actually confuse us in English because that doesn't work in English. And so translators know they have to add that. And sometimes if you look at those phrases that are in parentheses in a Bible, you can often find similar words in other parts of the Bible, and it'll have the same thing. And you can see that if you remove those words, the whole verse makes no sense. So, and there was one I saw just a while back that was in parentheses, and I can't remember. Oh, yeah, it was the one where Jesus declared all foods clean. And if you go there, it says, and thus Jesus declared all foods clean. But if you go look at it in original Greek, those words are not there like that, but there's like several words right before the passage that can't be understood any other way. So, yeah, because the churches that like to say that we still cannot eat pork, they'll point to that verse in those parentheses saying, see, that was added by the church. No, it isn't added by the church. It's added by the Greek language.
Yeah, but he's asking about the 1,000 years, I guess, with the difference between who's getting raised when, I think.
Yeah, well, that is exactly what I was just talking about. And look, I think most of the people that come here understand where I'm going with the Bible code videos, the book, the Bible code book, or whatever we're going to call it. And in that, it sounds like at one time, in the creation account, God created earth and He created the sun. And then eventually He created the moon. I think it's like the first day, the earth and the sun. The fourth day He created the moon. And it's always that the planets are created after the moon. Like if you read the book of Job, it talks about the 7 sons of Job. That's the 7 planets. Well, they're sons because Job was the earth. He was created first, and then those 7 planets were created afterwards. And so in the book of Revelation, we see those 7 planets coming back, but then we see something that's called a shoot or a clone of the earth coming into play. And it's called the green horse. And it sounds like what's happening is like right now we know the angels are here. People, that they're the messengers. They're here. They may be dead. They may be in spirit form, but also the demons. Very obvious the demons are here. There's no way in the world that human beings could do the vile things that they do unless they were being nudged along by some wicked spirits. And so all of those things are going to be put in their place after Armageddon. Well, if we think that the earth was made for humans, then maybe those other planets were made for those other living beings that we call angels and demons. Well, when Jesus was asked about His return, He said it's going to be like a separating work. We're going to separate the sheep from the goats. And I did a whole video about that and what it really means. But if we're going to take all of the humans and put them in one place, and then all of the demons in their places and all the angels in their places, then what happens is you get an earth that's filled with people who maintain their integrity, people who have proven loyal, proven that they have the capacity to love one another, and you're leaving all of these wicked torturers on the planet with us. Maybe that's that last planet to come into play is where wicked people go. And at the end of 1,000 years, after they've had a little bit of time to think about it, cool off, maybe we'll all be back together again in some way.
Kitchcool says he promises he will be in touch tomorrow. Sleepy Girl 85 chimes in, says they're here. Karen Bain says, thank you for all you do. You are greatly appreciated. BMW guy says, sorry I'm late. Sounds like a great discussion. And Uncle Nesta says, brother, puff, puff. I'm having a bad day.
He can't wait a week, can he?
I guess not. He says he's having a bad day. I found out my friend passed away, and I'm sad. Next question comes in from Chester Richardson. Adam and Eve were not the first people to be created.
Pass. Flatballs
comes in and says, so is Satan Dionysus?
Dionysus, who is that? There are so many different words for so many different gods. Dionysus is... It's difficult to say. You know, if you look at some of the gods, there's thousands and thousands of gods. But in the Bible, there are individual separate gods, like 7 of them. And if you look at ancient cultures, the cultures that were around the Promised Land, they worship Jupiter, they worship Saturn, and those are obviously 2 separate planets, would be 2 separate entities. But if you look at the worship of Saturn in some cultures and the worship of Jupiter and that in other cultures, it's like the same stories. So it's confusing. Either Jupiter and Saturn were the same god, just taking on different personas or different names. But it may be that, you know, some demons just have the same agenda and they do the same kind of stuff. But, you know, the Baals, like if you read about the Baals in the Bible, and it always uses Baal and a lot of times the Baal is translated in the plural form, but also so are the Ashtoreths. And we know that Ashtoreth is Venus because there are cultures that refer to Venus as Ashtoreth. I think she's also called Vashti in the Bible, maybe. No, she's called, Queen Vashti in the book of Esther is Venus or Ashtoreth. I don't know, it's confusing. It's confusing which ones are which, but I think after the resurrection, it's not going to be confusing at all.
Dale Rockwell chimes in, is that the god of wine? And then Mike Seth comments, Bacchus.
Yeah, that Bacchus is Dionysus. That's right. Well, you know what? That makes sense too, because remember, the angels that are drunk on the blood of humans, and Dionysus and Bacchus are both wine gods. You know, I'm only like 70 miles from New Orleans, and Bacchus is a big deal for them. And I think that the ones over the other direction, like in Mobile, it's Dionysus, I think. I haven't gone to I don't like Mardi Gras. I don't like crowds, so I don't go. I can hear them out here when they're going down, through my neighborhood. Everybody has Mardi Gras all the way from Pensacola to Baton Rouge, I think.
Next question comes from Don Jones. He says, why are there so many races of people? And Mac Wilcox chimes in and says, God created different races for different purposes.
I believe that they got different races of people so we could have variety. That way I don't have to spend all my time looking just at white women. Look at some Asian ones and black ones, and they're all beautiful. And I guess the men are beautiful. I'm just not that interested in men.
Well, Uncle Nesta comes in and asks, he says, my question this week is there a limited amount of souls and people that will be born without a soul after that number is reached? Is that valid? And Matt Wilcox chimes in that when all the souls are born, that begins the appointed time, the second advent. So how many souls are there?
If you look at, here's the thing. I've been in a lot of religions. If you are a member of a religion, then probably a lot of what I say is going to bother you, because if somebody had told me this stuff 30 years ago, it would have bothered me. But and I don't practice a religion of science, so when I look up at the sky, I see stars. I don't see much else, but I have seen videos and photographs and some of my astronomy books, and it sounds reasonable to me that our sun is just a star. So when you look up and see all those stars, each one of them is potentially a sun, right? And you think that's a lot of potential planets. There's 7 planets or 8 planets if you include Earth, and if you include the moons, there's 200 planetoids circling our sun, so perhaps 200 around every star. But that's not really true, because our star is in a galaxy. So when you look up at a lot of what you see that is stars. But some of those stars are actual clusters of stars similar to our galaxy, supposedly. I don't know. I'm not teaching science, but it sounds reasonable. If our universe is really as big as science teaches, even if it's 1/100th that big, we're talking about billions upon billions of stars surrounded by potentially billions and billions of planets, and each of those planets probably filled with life. Even our solar system, there's too many stories in our Bible and outside of the Bible that indicate that at one time all of the planets were very, very close to one another. In other words, when Saturn would pass by, it would block out the light of the sun. That's not possible for a couple of reasons. One, Saturn is outboard. Saturn is not between the Earth and the sun. It's out in deep space. And secondly, it's so far away, it's just a little teeny tiny dot. But if we imagine that there was a time when, in fact, all of these cultures actually did see really, really clear details of the 7 planets, then it's possible that all of those planets were close enough or far enough away from the sun to support life. I've often wondered, if the whole Earth was converted into a paradise for man, then there are species that live in the polar regions that might not survive, and there's species that live in the deserts that might not be survivors. At the very least, they wouldn't be comfortable. And so if we can open our minds up to the possibility that all of the planets in our solar system at one time had life, then we have to also open up our minds to the fact that billions of stars out there may have had life. I can't imagine there being any limit to what we call souls or spirits. I don't even begin to try to explain. I can't even describe what life is. I know that I'm alive. I can't explain what that means. So to try to explain why I'm alive, or if other things can be alive and just continue being alive for all eternity, or if there's a limit, I can't do it. I don't know.
Uncle Nesta says, I truly enjoy your videos. God bless you. Jake Green's Model Car Shop chimes in. He says, hi, Henry. Next question comes from Super
by the way, before we go any further, Jake Green's Model Car Shop is a YouTube channel, and I went there, and his first video was like, I may have already said this. Did I already tell you this before? There was like,
I think so.
Yeah, he had a video of him blowing up a model car, but he was running away while he was doing it. So it's like you see this car doing this, and then boom. And so I said something to him like, man, you need to set the camera up on a tripod. And so a couple of days later, he had a real clear, and it looked like one of them NASA cameras. Man, that car is like, boom! It's slow motion. So if you get a chance, go to Jake Green's Model Car Shop and look at put that one on your front page so people can see it. He was blowing up an El Camino and a Taurus, I think, or a Crown Vic.
Super U asks the next question. Do you believe Jewish scholars can search the Torah for past and future events?
No. Well, let me say this. It's like, okay, angels are called messengers, right? And in the Bible, we're told that there are righteous angels and wicked angels. Now, at the very beginning of the Bible, we're told that all these angels were righteous. And then suddenly some of them determined that it'd be best to be gods themselves, and they became wicked. But in the book of Revelation, it talks about angels like a reunification. Like suddenly the wicked angels are back in God's good graces. And that's basically the story of the prodigal son. So, wait a second. What was the question again? Please tell me you didn't forget it.
It was, Uh-oh.
You got to scroll up. It's like 2 pages back now.
Yeah, I moved on. Oh, it was the Jewish scholars looking for future events or something.
Okay, so here's the deal. Now that I've got my anchor point again. I've got a Talmud up here. And I've also got like Book of Enoch, and I've got the, Tai Te Ching, the, what is that, Dhammapada or whatever, the Buddha, and all of these different religions, when you read them, they're all so similar. But it's like what I was reading at the very beginning when I said that around the world, all religions are extremely close, but they're told from 2 perspectives. So you've got the perspective of the God of creation, and all other religions seem to be of the God of civilization. In other words, there's only one Bible, and then there's everything else. But they're all so close together. Now, if you read them, and you keep in mind that destroying God's planet is bad, then you can get something out of that. And I really think that every religion that exists on this earth was not created by man, but created by angels. It's just like which angels created these religions. They're not necessarily all wicked angels, because angels might be like us, just good sometime, bad other times, halfway stupid, halfway smart. But I can read the Book of Mormon and see some truth in that. The Book of Enoch seems to me to be very obviously something that should have been in the Bible, but half of the Book of Enoch is like Satanism. So it's almost like there were a whole bunch of different angels involved in creating all of these ancient books. And basically, if you're asking about rabbis being able to predict the future, you're asking about what angels are in contact with them. And a lot of that probably comes from this Talmud thing. And what's hidden in the Talmud, I don't know. When I read through it, it was kind of bad. It was very obviously bad. But, wicked angels know a lot more than people. So it's possible that they're going to have some insights that we don't have. But then again, it may just be to mislead us. So it may all be wrong.
Jake Green's Model Car Shop says, thanks, Henry, for the plug. Dale Rockwell comes in with the...
You'll have nearly 100 subscribers before this is over, just like me.
Well, Uncle Nesta said he's going to go there.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, he's cool. Good. He's a cool dude. I've got a few subscribers. He's a young guy. I really like it when young people are kind of open to spiritual things, because so many young people are just, they can have blow up model cars, and that's their life. They don't care about anything any deeper than that. So it's kind of cool. I was deep. When I was a kid, I was very spiritual. So,
next question comes from Dale Rockwell. This kind of follows on the footsteps of the last question. Are there female angels and demons? It seems like it's always male angels, like breeds of dogs.
No female angels mentioned in the Bible. But that doesn't mean they're not there. It's like there's millions of species that exist in the fossil record, T-Rexes and brontosaurs and all that. And in the Bible, there's only like 5 prehistoric animals that are mentioned that no longer exist, and we don't even know what they are. We know they're big. It's like, what is it? Behemoth says you can't even, a man cannot even put his arms around the tail of Behemoth. So that's a big animal. But that's only, so the fact that the Bible doesn't mention all those other dinosaurs that exist in the fossil record doesn't mean they didn't exist. And not only that, but God never ever speaks of anything male anywhere else in the Bible unless there's something female to go along with it, and vice versa. And in fact, remember in the very beginning, we talked about this last week, the word El means God. That's singular. Elohim means gods, plural. But in our Bibles, they translate that word gods as God, singular. And so a lot of people believe that Elohim is like a special name for the special God. Well, it isn't. It's the gods. It is still the plural sound. So if you go back to Genesis, it says, and the gods have said, let us make mankind, the word is mankind, in our image. And so they made mankind in their image, male and female, they created mankind. So if they're saying that the God said, let us make mankind in our image, and then immediately says, we'll make them male and female, it's almost like they're saying, let's make them male and female just like us. See, that's just reasonable, right?
The next question comes from Karen Bain, and she must be a new listener because she says, please tell me, is organized religion a scam?
It is, but it's not like a scam of humans. It's a scam of Satan and the demons. It doesn't mean that God, can't get anything out of it, or that God doesn't allow it, because obviously, I was in a religion, and maybe you were in a religion. Ala Toledo, I don't think, was ever in a religion. But that doesn't mean that I was a bad person when I was in religion, or that I was a scammer, but I was in it. And I got to imagine that a lot of the people that are in that are just decent human beings. And I think if they're in that long enough, they may ascend to being preachers or priests or something. So there's got to be some good ones out there, right? But it's in the Bible, all references to religion are to demon worship. Even when God allowed the Jews to have their temple and all that, there is just so much information in there about how much that hurt God's heart, how sad it made him when they built this temple and when they were killing his animals and sacrifices, and how disgusting it was. It's not like that's hidden. It's in there, even in an English Bible. If you pick up an English Bible and read it, even though they have tried to soften all those verses or make it seem like I guess in religion, most people believe when God said, I hate your sacrifices, the teaching is that the Jews just weren't doing the sacrifices right. If they'd have been doing them properly, God would have loved them. But that's not what the Bible says. The Bible says he hated their sacrifices.
Going back to the female angels, Dave Rockwell jokes that the female angels are home cooking. That's why they're not there.
Hey, that's back to religion, man. That's back to religion.
Yeah, I wonder. We should send that screenshot to his family. Grandma Patty says, Gabriel, I always thought was female.
Well, what is it? One of them, if you look at the planets, okay, this is weird, and I'll try to keep this simple because I want you to take this, I want everybody out there to be able to take this home with them. In the Bible, the planets are named Neptune, Uranus, Jupiter, Saturn, Mars, and then there's, on the other side of the earth is Mercury and Venus. Well, every single one of those names is male, with one exception. Venus is the goddess of beauty. She's the sex goddess. She's the mother goddess. And in the Bible, there are all these male names for gods, and the only female name is Ashtoreth. And in some cultures, Venus is called Ashtoreth. Now, scientifically, the religion of science teaches that every planet spins clockwise or counterclockwise, depending on whether you're looking at it from top or bottom. Venus is the only one. Venus is the only planet that spins backwards from the other seven, and the other seven being including Earth. And so there, by name, there's only that one that's female, and Gabriel is never associated with Venus in the Bible. But there are other names in the Bible of female, or not in the Bible, but outside of the Bible, that, like in the archangels, there's 7 archangels that are listed in the Jewish religion, and they're like Michael, which is what we translate as Michael, and Gabriel, which is what we're talking about right now, and then there's Lucifer. But Lucifer is just the English name that's been associated with him. The angel Lucifer in our English Bibles in the original Hebrew is Halael, like a halo, Halael. That's where we get our word Lucifer. But outside of the Bible, in ancient Jewish writings, they talk about one called Hanael. And Hanael, I think, is Venus, but I can't prove it because I haven't done even if you do the research, you can spend your whole life trying to sort all that out. It's the same thing. You've got every culture has a different name and a different description of their gods, and they get so mixed up. You know, we in the West, we make fun of Hindus because they have thousands of, supposedly 30,000 gods, 33,000 gods. And really in the West we do too. You know, if you're Catholic, you know, St. Christopher, St. Joseph, there's 33,000 saints in the Catholic Church. And the Baptist Church is just the Catholic Church without a pope, or with a different pope.
Next question comes from Uncle Nesta. He asks, what's your take on Sumerian?
I think Sumeria is the, you know, when, if you, there's the Sumerian text, that might be what he's talking about, because the Sumerian text are the oldest writing in existence, according to archaeologists. But, you know, I've read things about Sumerians were here 100 million years ago or something, and obviously if you follow back the origins of man all the way to Adam, that's 6,000 years. And in general, every time you look at something about millions of years ago or whatever, that's some guy with a college degree, so you really can't trust any of that. But the Sumerians existed kind of alongside of the Canaanites. They might have been they're part of the Canaanites. You know, Canaan is that whole land there. So you've got the Philistines, and you've got the Jews, and then there's the Hittites and all those people. But in that group is the Sumerians. And in fact, in our English Bibles, they're not called Sumerians because the translation, once again, they're Samaritans. So when Jesus told the story of the Good Samaritan, if you go look at that in original languages, he was telling the story of the Good Samaritan. And if you know, here's the thing. All of the ancient writings of Samaria, the Sumerian text, sound like the Bible. And so there are people that hate God, hate the Bible. They want to be, you know, in the atheist religion. And so they'll hold the Sumerian text up and say, see, the Bible is plagiarism. It's just a copy of the Sumerian text. Well, that could go either way. You know, if you go out there and radiometric date the oldest copy of the Bible or the oldest rock in Israel, and then you go carbon date or radiometrically date the oldest rock in Samaria, and you get millions of years of difference. You know, you can put your faith in radiometric dating. I did a video called Radiometric Dating, and it's kind of a cheesy, it's like a shell game. It's a trick. You know, they distract you by looking at that big billion-dollar machine, and then they get you to believe in it, the numbers that pop out of it. But they both were around at the same time. The stories in the Sumerian text are the same stories as the Bible because it's the same stories. Same thing with Egyptian. You can go into Egyptian mythology. It's the same story, you know. It's the same story, same characters. Chinese, North American, you can find stories in North American culture, Native American culture, that are almost identical to the Bible. You know, did they copy the Bible, or did the Bible copy them, or did they both experience the same thing? You know, if you've got 1 million people and they're watching a single event, and they all go different directions, you can imagine that their stories would be similar. They may not be identical, but, you know, like the flood. If somebody in North America saw a flood and somebody in China saw a flood, probably the same flood. You know, only 8 people survived the flood, and according to the Bible, those 8 people went 8 different directions. They had kids, their kids went all different directions. They had kids, and it gives you the list of where they went. And some of them went to North America, some of them went to China.
Uncle Nesta likes your answer, and he says he agrees with you, and then he finishes up by saying he has the living water Jesus spoke of. Next question comes from Douglas Ailiff. He says, Henry, do you believe there's a Planet X?
There's hundreds of them. Yeah, here's the thing is that here's how they came up with Planet X, and I don't know if you know this. I didn't know this until recently. There was some woman, and she... I'm not talking about millions of years ago, or I'm not talking about 10 years ago, but I think within like the last 100 years that wrote about, she may still be alive, And she wrote this story about that in a dream or a vision she saw this Planet X thing. But then she also said that she saw another planet that was a twin of Earth. You know, when I was doing my research about the twin of Earth, I came upon this information. Now, if we look at ancient cultures around the world, they speak of planets that are no longer here. Now, I'm not just going to take the word of some woman who had a vision or a dream, because she may also just be schizophrenic, which is, you know, a lot of the information I get that wakes me up to truth comes from people that have schizophrenia, because I think they're like halfway in this world and halfway in the spirit world, and so they see things that other people don't see, but I don't believe in the 100% accuracy of what they see. So this woman supposedly had a vision or a dream about Planet X. And I believe that, but I don't believe all the details. I believe that she was probably seeing a vision. It involved something, and it was probably a celestial object, something to do with the ancient past, as well as something to do with the future. But if you look at her book, and I don't have a copy of the book, but I read up on her, there's a lot more involved than just she saw a planet. Her planet that she saw returns every 15,000 years. It's been doing this for millions of years. It came through once and it crushed a planet between Jupiter and Mars. And another time it came through and it just barely missed. And another time it hit a comet or something. And see, all that stuff is, there's nothing in the ancient records of man to indicate that those details are correct. We look at the ancient records of man, we see that astrologers or astronomers from the ancient past recorded a sky that does not look like our sky today. And the Bible talks about restoring the heavens so that they do look like the ancient sky. But it doesn't give enough information. You know, I mean, that's one of the problems with religion, is people will learn one little truth and they get so excited about it that they start throwing in all these little details that they don't know, and they come off looking like liars. So I won't go into the details. I'll say this, that our solar system as it exists today is not the way it was designed from the beginning, and in the very near future it's going to go back to the way God wanted it, including this new planet that's perhaps on the other side of the sun, identical to the Earth.
Next question is sort of a two-parter, I think. So in case you get lost, I'll repeat it. It comes from Unfinished Mystery. They say Jehovah said he regretted creating mankind. Do you think this passage is translated properly? Second part is, and is the concept of free will of choice proof that we're not just robots or an experiment?
Okay, we'll do the first part. Write that down so later, you know, when I ask you, you'll know what to say. Tell me.
Yep.
The first thing where it says that God regretted making man, I'm trying to remember where that was. I think it's right before the flood, and he's talking to Noah, and or what? I wish I had more reference to that, because there was a time when he regretted taking the Israelites out of Egypt, and another time, when he said that the earth was ruined. In the book of Genesis, chapter 9, he said that the earth was ruined before him, and he regretted that he had made man upon the earth. I don't know that that's mistranslated. It may have some little details that are not right, like the negative emotion he felt may not have been really regret. I hate to answer things that I don't know the answer to. If you were sitting here in this room, I'd say just go over there and take a break, and I would just go on a concordance and kind of compare every occurrence of that word in the Bible and see what was implying. But right now, all I can say is I don't know. I don't know if that's translated properly, but I think if we just look at the Bible overall and we look at that verse, even as it's translated in English, we can see that God did have negative emotions over his creating man, or putting man here on the earth. When he gave Adam and Eve a choice to do right or wrong, there would have to have been at least the possibility that they would choose to do what's right. You know, it wasn't just a setup from the get-go. There had to have been some possibility that Eve would tell Satan, I'm not interested.
maybe that's how it ties into the question of free will then. So that's the second part. And
What is this? The second part was what?
is asking about the free will. So they're asking, is the concept of free will proof that we're not robots? And then Super U68 chimes in and says, also, I wouldn't understand God sending his son to die for robots or just an experiment.
When Jesus died, look, there's a whole lot to that. If you go to church, all they're going to tell you is Jesus died for your sins. They're never going to tell you what that means. But see, this whole thing, the whole Bible, the war between God's kingdom and Satan empire, revolves around this question. And it's the question of whether or not humans really did have free will, because he allowed Adam and Eve to enter into a covenant with Satan. That happened. He didn't say, no, you're not going to do that. He allowed it. He's God. It's not like he couldn't stop it if he wanted. And so when Adam and Eve died, there were still other people here, and they all, even to this day, when somebody voluntarily enters into this world and chooses to do the things that are required by this world and enjoys the things that this world requires, they're basically entering into Satan's covenant. Now, we're all in it because we have no choice, but there are people that, given the choice, would still eat that apple. And, that's the whole thing is Jesus came and he did everything required of him by the covenant. So this satanic covenant, the covenant that God approved of, where you don't eat pork and you go to town on Passover day and you do all the things that was required by the law, Jesus apparently did those perfectly. And they executed him for not being obedient to the law. That was proof positive that the covenant that Eve entered into with Satan was illegal and it was void. That's how Jesus died for our sins. It wasn't that God wanted a ritual human sacrifice. It was that God sent someone who could carry out the law perfectly, and the priest of that law killed him anyway. So there you go. We're rescued because now it's proven that even though man is being given this opportunity to enter into the covenant, it's a fixed contract. God's not playing anything fixed, but Satan's half of it is. Civilization is a scam and it's fixed. There's no way to win.
Last question comes from Dale Rockwell, and then you can take us out after this. He says, when Satan and Eve were getting it on, where was Adam? You said that Eve had a son with Satan?
In the Bible, we're told about Lucifer coming to earth and tricking Eve into this covenant. And then it says that the sons of the true God came, which apparently was an event that took place after this covenant was entered into. And it said that these angels took for themselves sex partners, mostly any woman they chose, and they reproduced offspring with these women. Now, I specifically mention Eve because in the very beginning of the Bible, Eve is called Aish Shah, which means ruler of the male tribal ruler, or leader of the male tribal leader. Because Adam was called Aish, which is male tribal leader. So Aish Shah. So male tribal leader, leader of the male tribal leader. And Aish Shah is where the word Isis comes from. So here we go. Halael, Halo, Satan, is spoken of outside the Bible as Osiris, because the Halael means the bearer of the eye of enlightenment. And in the Egyptian mythology, Osiris means bearer of the eye of enlightenment. Isis is the same word as Aisha or Aisha, which is Eve. But it could also be any female tribal leader. So I suspect that the very first world, the first story is about Eve and Satan in particular, but as time went on, all women became mates of all these angels, these wicked angels, and so they all could be called Aish Shah because each and every one of them would be a ruler of the male tribal ruler. Now, the Bible doesn't record a child being born between Eve and Satan. You know, when it talks about Cain and Abel, we're always told that Cain was the seed of Satan, Abel was the seed of Adam. But the Bible very specifically says in several references that Adam had sex with Eve and from that sex produced a male offspring named Cain. So Cain, according to the Bible, was Adam's son. Now he may have become Satan's son by simply entering into a covenant himself and being like an adopted son. And throughout the Bible there is the concept of adoption with humans who are able to be adopted by God as adopted sons of God. So that would leave open the door for any human who wishes to be an adopted son of Satan. So, I mean, I'm not trying to confuse anybody, but we're not given all the details. But what details we have to pretty much accept that they're true. Okay, that's the last question, and now I'm completely lost. But I do remember how to go out. Let me get my little finger on the trigger here so I can turn this off as soon as I get finished. Maybe. As always, we hope that you enjoyed our live stream today, and we'll return next week for another one. And if you don't want to survive, don't listen to us. Oh, I didn't.